Hello, 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 everyone. Happy Wednesday. I'm Claire Jones. If we haven't already met, I'm an author and small publisher committed to changing the world for the better through inclusive stories and practices. We are jumping on today for my Authorvision Facebook Live series, where I interview the amazing and inspiring industry people in my network to discuss the personal visions that have shaped our lives and careers. So if you're joining us, please like, comment, share below. Let us know that you're here. And today I'm talking to Kristen, who's actually an editor. So we're actually getting a little bit of a different perspective today, which I'm excited for.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, Claire.
Yeah. We met at the San Francisco Writers Conference back in February, and I'm just so glad we sat at the same table.
Same, absolutely the same here. I always love meeting new people, and in the brief time we were able to talk, because conferences are so packed with meeting new people and learning new things, I was very inspired by what you do in your business and just your vision for what you like to bring to the publishing industry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's just dive right into it. So what's your backstory? How did you get to where you are today?
Well, when I was an angsty teenager, I wanted to be a writer. That's all I wanted to do. I wrote angsty poetry. I wrote angsty, well, what I thought was dark and angsty prose, as you do.
Yeah. I mean, if we didn't have an angsty teenage phase, then what were we doing?
Then are you really a writer or someone who works with writers? Yeah. Then I looked at colleges that had writing programs. I had considered a couple. And at the time, UC Santa Cruz had a creative writing program, still does actually. And they didn't have grades at that time. They just did narrative evaluations. And I really liked that idea, because how can you quantify writing? So I went there. I earned my degree in literature with an emphasis in fiction with creative writing. But something interesting happened my senior year. Writing has always been a somewhat painful process for me. I just get so in my head, and I'm not happy when I'm writing. I know I'm a good writer, and I try to say that without sounding super egotistical. I know my writing is solid. I know I'm good at my craft, but it's not something I enjoy. During my senior seminar, my senior year, where we've all been in critique groups. So it was basically a couple of quarters of critiques, very intense critiques with my peers. I found that my classmates were bringing their work to me, even if they weren't in my direct critique group. And I found I much more enjoyed helping them shape their words than working on my own. And in fact, one of my classmates came back and said, my mom's an editor, and she said, you should really look into being an editor. And so the wheel started turning. I went to college fully intending to graduate as a writer, but instead I started pursuing editing. And I bounced around various publishers. I've worked at a college textbook publisher. I worked at a real estate publisher.
Wow.
I've even edited assessment items for standardized tests. And currently my day job, I'm an instructional designer. So there's a lot of editing that goes in there, and a lot of assessment items. So that helps pay the bills, right, and get some benefits. But I do have a freelance business. It's just under my name, and I focus on fiction and memoir and cookbooks. Somewhere along the way, I decided it'd be fun to go and get a culinary degree just for funsies, and it's actually helped me get a few jobs. And so I like the varied genres that I work in. It kind of keeps me on my toes.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I love about writing in general, is you can bring pretty much any expertise, any topic to writing. Like, it's such a transferable skill set. And I love that you, in the beginning, talked about how your college had written evaluations instead of grades, because my college was the same. And it's one of the reasons why I chose it as well, because how can you really qualify these more subjective things like essays, and my degrees in art history. So like, how can you really objectify those more subjective humanities based, almost critical thinking skills,
Right. Where there's a lot of interpretation, and, and the intent is, I think, between art, well, writing is a form of art, right? Any form of art, the audience of that art is going to take away from it what they individually will take away from it. And I think it's important, and I tell this to all of my clients, you may have an intention behind what you are putting on the page, but you cannot control what your reader is going to take away from that. So I'm here to help kind of not bridge that gap, but shorten that gap and get it a little bit closer to your vision, but also something that resonates with the reader in a profound way.
And we've talked about this on this podcast before, but I always think like the best writers do have a diverse array of interests as well, because that helps flesh out their writing to make it more multidimensional and more faceted, so that it's not just a narrow interpretation of one singular topic.
Absolutely. And I would contend the same is true for editors. The more varied our experiences are, the more we're able to go, and even with copy editing, say, I have a colleague who designs historical costumes. So it's an interesting subgenre that she specializes in, but she can edit historical fiction and go, they didn't actually use corsets during this period. So maybe you want to think about something different. Just simple things like that, because a lot of times it's those details that will pull the reader out of the story.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I came across that in my first novel. I was writing about a barrel of ale that had washed up on shore and sat in the sun for many hours. And so I had written the ale went stale and sour as a result of sitting in the sun for the amount of hours it went. And I had a beta reader come in and she was like, "Is that true?" And I was like,
really?
I don't know, because I don't know that much about brewery,
Right.
And so I have to research, like, if it's a sealed, corked ale barrel, would it go bad if it sits in the sun for multiple hours? And the answer is no.
No. See, we learned something new today.
Yeah. I was like, well, I'm glad you caught that, because I had no idea.
Nice. And this is where beta readers are an absolute treasure. You're going to get varied perspectives, and then from there you go and you're more ready for a developmental editor who is going to say, okay, amazing, you've gotten this feedback, which, by the way, you don't have to take everybody's feedback.
Definitely.
But if 9 out of the 10 beta readers say the same thing, you may want to consider leaning into that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's back up a little bit and talk about what personal visions have shaped this journey of yours in your career.
Well, I mentioned I'm an instructional designer. I went back to school a couple of years ago and ended up getting my master's degree in instructional design and technology, because I like that. Well, one, steady income.
Right.
My business, I've been editing for 15 years now, and I would love to just do editing 100% of the time, but the reality is that I live in California, and California is not cheap, and so therefore I do need a steady income. But I also enjoy it. And what I enjoy in instructional design, which for those who don't know, is I design courses and trainings. So part of my freelance work is I also am a course consultant. I help the same way that I help authors make sure that the readers are getting the intended message. I help course developers make sure that their learners are getting the intended learning. So if that makes sense. So there is distinct parallel there. But in editing, I also feel like I am teaching my clients. I tell every one of my clients, even if it's a simple proofread, that I want them to walk away from this working relationship having learned something that they can use in their craft. So I would say with the vision is that I joke that I make the world a better place, eradicating one typo at a time. But that's kind of a negative viewpoint. But on a positive viewpoint, I also put out there in the world more confident writers. I help writers build their confidence, because it's not as simple as I'm just going to move the commas here or there, then I'm just an order taker.
Totally.
I want to have a conversation with my authors. And I know that I personally enjoy that. I feel more enriched when I've taken something away from an experience and go, I've learned something here. And now I can apply that in this place in my life, or with this that I do in my work, or this that I do with my craft. So I would say that is my overwhelming vision. I have had colleagues say that I'm warm, and not warm and cuddly, just warm with my
Verging on hot.
yeah, cuddly crosses a little like ethical boundary. That's a different type of editor. And I appreciate that feedback. I don't, cause I've never really seen myself that way, but I'm trying to lean into the compliment and go, yeah, you know what? Yes, I view myself as supportive because I work with a lot of memoir authors, and there is some trauma with some of the memoirs that I read. Talking to my therapist, I was sharing with her kind of the process that I go through. I don't share any details about my client's work, of course. And she says, "Oh my gosh, you do therapy. You do
Yeah.
therapy with your
Yeah.
authors." And I said,
Yeah.
"Yeah, you're not wrong." And we often say that trying to find an editor is the same way as trying to find a therapist. You want to find someone who is going to work with your style, work with your same values, work with your same vision,
Yeah. Yeah.
and be able to recognize that vision and support you, the author, in realizing that vision.
I mean,
That's kind of a circuitous way of getting to your question.
no, I absolutely love it. I mean, you just hit the nail on the head with the finding an editor is kind of like finding a therapist. Like that's a phrase that I might use in the future.
Feel free to take it. It is not copyrighted. It's the thing is you can meet half a dozen excellent editors, but there's probably only one of those editors who is going to work well with you, and you're going to work well with them. And it doesn't mean that the other 5 are bad. It just means they're not the right fit for you. I have certainly parted ways with clients before when it seemed at first that we were going to work well together, and our working style just didn't mesh, or one client in particular, they were wanting more of a ghost writing kind of service, and that is not what I provide. I'm more of a coach and a guider in these endeavors. And so I say, it just doesn't sound like what we are wanting out of this working relationship is really meshing here. So, I think it's best that we part ways. And I pointed that client to the Editorial Freelancers Association, where you can search for other professionals.
And I think you're right in the sense of like, you have to start with your personal brand too, when you start this journey. So you have to have a really deep self-awareness of what that brand even is to start with.
100%, 100%. And, with that brand comes your values.
Exactly.
What, you want yourself to look like. But I feel like the core of it is values, really. I have colleagues who say, "Oh, I just don't know that I can support working on this type of project anymore because it doesn't align with my business values."
Yeah.
But it may align with somebody else's. Is anyone else interested in taking this on? And here's the outline of the project. And that is what I love about this community too, is the editing communities. We're very tight knit, much the same way that the writing community is, and very supportive of each other.
Yeah, I mean, it really is becoming super aware of where your value compass lies, because that also makes things a lot more efficient for you. Because you say like, this aligns, this does not align, let's move on.
Right. That's right. And I think it helps us stay true to ourselves, right? It's so easy to go, oh, that sounds exciting, I'm going to do that. And it's a matter of taking a pause and going, what am I wanting to put out there in the world? How am I wanting the world to see me? And what is my authenticity in that viewing of me and my work that I'm putting out there in the world?
Yeah, exactly. And like, we're talking about visions here too. Like, this is kind of the meta topic of what we're talking about here, is like how these visions, how these values, how these missions align with your path and how they have impacted your path along the way. I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about here too.
Right. It's funny that I've gotten into instructional design. I'm actually speaking at a conference later this year to editors about building their business by adding a course. And I'm going, you all have something to teach. We as editors are natural teachers. And I would also argue that by extension, authors are.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a fiction story, you are
Mhm.
sharing something and you're teaching someone how to be entertained, how to enter that world that you've created. You know, it's not a lesson that you're going to be tested on later.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not 2 + 2 = 4. It's
But there is no way that anyone encounters any form of art and isn't changed in some way
yes,
and
exactly.
affected.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about lessons that you've learned, but are there any other big lessons that you've come across during this path?
I have learned how to slow down and listen. So I am
Love
not
a lesson.
I am not I am not saying that I am adept at it. I am better and I am a work in progress.
Yeah. Yeah.
And therein itself lies a lesson, right? Just being open to the idea that you are always learning.
Mhm.
Um, some of the best editors I know, and honestly, some of the best authors I know, recognize that they don't know what they don't know,
Yeah.
and
And
they
that's
are
okay.
open to learning that. There's a theme here. I keep going back to learning. Um, Lessons learned. So I'm not ashamed to admit this. There was when I first started and I was a baby editor straight out of college, I was, very confident. Oh, I know all this stuff. I didn't know all this stuff. Just as an aside, I did not. And I missed a glaring error in a book. Now
Mhm.
I changed hundreds of other things and caught hundreds of other things in this manuscript, but the client was understandably not pleased.
Mm.
And I fixed it for free and we moved on. But it did make me go, you know what? You need to slow down. You are not a hot shot.
Mhm.
You are not a seasoned editor, and even seasoned editors really slow down. We all work at different paces.
Mhm.
Um, and I would translate that to authors to say, look, you cannot compare the speed at which you produce your works
Yeah.
with anybody else,
Yeah.
especially because we're all human.
Yeah.
Some days I am able to edit uh, 50 pages, no problem. Some days I can edit 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I don't want to show up with my clients and give them a bad edit. I don't want to force myself to hit a
Mm.
certain number. I want
Mm.
to deliver quality to them. And I urge my authors to do that too. I'm like, if you are hitting a day where you are just not feeling it and it is like trying to drag the words out, get a few words out, then you've accomplished something for the day.
Totally.
But give your brain a break. That's
Yeah.
your brain and your body telling you, hang on, we're just kind of needing a break right now. And I said, I
Yes.
guarantee you're going to come back refreshed the
Yeah.
next day or even 2 days later.
Yeah, I mean, you got to respect the ebb and flow. Like
Yeah.
I play the 5-minute game with myself
Yes.
where I'm like, I will genuinely try to do this task for 5 minutes. I will give
Yeah.
myself 5 minutes. I will genuinely give my best effort for 5 minutes. And then at the end of that 5 minutes, if I still feel like banging my head against the wall, I
I
will
love that. I
down.
love that.
I will put it down. But more often than not, I'm like half an hour in and I've completed a chunk of work. And so then I can feel good about myself for the
I
rest of
give myself I have a tortoiseshell cat named Grace, and I give myself cat breaks as a
Mm.
reward. And when
Yeah.
I'm having a hard day concentrating, I'm like 20 minutes, and then you get to go rub the belly
Yeah.
and cuddle for a few minutes. And of course, Grace is very happy when that
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me, I don't know if you're a fan of the show Gilmore Girls,
Oh
but
yeah.
there's the scene where she's studying and she does a skittle for each page she reads.
Yeah. Yep.
Like that's a perfect example of just like intermittent positive reinforcement.
Absolutely. And if that works for you, that works for you. I tend to not, I am not knocking that analogy.
Totally.
But I tend to not, I used to offer that, I was like, give yourself a piece of chocolate.
Mm.
But I know that food issues
Oh yeah.
are,
Yeah.
talking about food issues is becoming, I don't want to say it's comfortable, but we are being more open about talking about those things. So I definitely don't want to trigger any of my clients. And it goes back to my philosophy and my vision. I want to be supportive and respectful of my clients because not everyone works the same. And that's a big lesson I learned in instructional design and learning about instructional design. Not
Yeah.
everybody learns the same way. You have kinetic learners who learn by touching. You have
Mhm.
audible learners who learn by hearing. I am not one of those. I'm a visual learner. I need to see something and I need to write it down, and then I remember it.
Mhm.
And much the same way with authors, I have a long questionnaire where when I'm onboarding an author, and I talk with them about, what their preferred method of communication is. I
Yeah.
offer a 60-minute follow-up Zoom session with my clients after I've delivered the final manuscript to them, or the final edited manuscript. And I say, look, it's Zoom, but you don't have to be on the camera. We can treat
Mhm.
it just like a phone call,
Mm.
because I want to respect people's space. If
Yeah.
I'm meeting them in their comfort zone, and I'm also expressing to them my boundaries. So we have a little Venn diagram of our sweet little comfort space here,
I love
where
that.
we can work effectively with each
Yeah.
other.
Venn diagram comfort space. I
Yeah,
mean, that's another phrase that I might have to steal.
go for it.
All right, so as we wrap up, what tools or practices did you use along the way to support yourself as you pursued these visions? Like, what kept you sane?
Don't get me seen. I'm going to give a big shout out to my mastermind group.
Mm.
And that is something that I encourage anyone to form a group with people, however many you feel comfortable with is great.
Mhm.
Four is, and we're at four. No, sorry, we're at five.
Mhm.
Yeah, five. See, you're going. Ah, I work with words, people, not numbers. And we've been meeting, my gosh, for about a year and a half now. We have a Slack group, and we have weekly one thing. So we have our weekly goals, we have our long-term goals, we have a successes channel, we have a venting channel.
That's necessary. That is so
Yes.
necessary.
And sometimes it's not even about editing. So that is crucial. We meet about every 3 weeks, but we tend to communicate every day with each other, and we all edit in different genres. I'm the only fiction editor in the group, and I'm the only developmental editor. And my other masterminds who are copy editors go, "We don't know how you do it. There are no rules. How do you know what to say?" And I said, "Well,
Yeah.
that's what I love. I love being able to talk with people about arcs and character development and the narrative and the theme." So that has been the number one thing that has really helped me. And in talking about the things you and I have talked about today, we often talk about what our visions for our businesses are, what our
Mm.
goals are for the year, what our milestones are for achieving those goals, and
Mm.
maybe some different ways of going about it. And we're inspired by each other, going, "Oh, I love what you said there about doing this for your business. I think I'm going to borrow that and kind of tweak it for my business."
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
mastermind groups, writing groups,
I mean,
your
community.
amount. Yeah, absolutely.
It's priceless to have that type of community around you, especially if you're in the creative industries, because I mean, we
Yeah,
kind
writing and editing are solo, right? It's a solo. We're so alone when
exactly.
we're doing it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just
No,
so excited.
no, I mean, it's because we do get so disregarded and minimized by society at large as like the starving artist prototype that we've been taught to believe
Right.
in. And if we don't have that community backing us up, like I call it our cheerleaders, is like
Mhm.
we need those people because there are going to be bad days.
Oh
There's going
yeah.
to be months where you feel like throwing in the towel, if not years. You
Right.
feel like throwing in the towel. But you have to have people who are like, no, you're good, you're good, you're good, you're good.
Right. And sometimes it's as simple as you just sharing your stumbling block or your frustration or the stumbling mountain that you're coming up against. Sometimes it's not a little block.
Yes.
Sometimes just the act of voicing those words or typing out those words to your community is all you need
Hmm.
to get re-energized and get back on that path that you've been so excited to be on for so long.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. I love this. Anything you want to add before I wrap things up?
I can't think of anything. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm very, very grateful that we connected at the Writers Conference,
Yeah.
and I'm grateful for everyone I met at the Writers Conference, authors and publishing professionals alike. And I would just leave your audience with that message of community. Do
Yeah.
not be afraid to reach out. there are people out there who are just like you, who are seeking the same.
Oh, I love that. I need that on a bumper sticker. All right, so this is powerful stuff that we're talking about today. And audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own insights and stories and feelings with us as well. We'd love to know how these personal visions like these have impacted you in your own lives and careers. So special thanks to Kristen for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so please comment, like, subscribe. You can check out all of my links at linktree/clairjoyance. And then where can people find out more about you?
They can go to my website at kristenedits.com. That's KristenEdits.com, just like it sounds, Kristen Edits, because that's what I do. And you can find my contact information there. You will also see me posting occasionally to Instagram. I go on a walk almost every day, although I sprained both of my ankles a few weeks ago. So I've been taking a break from that. But yeah, feel free to reach out with any questions. My email is directly on my website.
Awesome. And I'll make sure all of those links are available too in the descriptions for easy access. But until next time, please remember that you all have extraordinary stories inside of you, and I'm rooting for you as you use them to change the world for the better. Take care, everyone.
Bye.